Do you find sand coarse, rough, and irritating? Well, Anakin Skywalker certainly did. My name is Tom, and this is another installment of Pros and Cons, and today we're talking about a movie celebrating its 20th anniversary this week, Attack of the Clones. So Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I'm going to give 4 pros for this movie and 4 cons. I have already done a full review of this movie a few years ago, so you can go and check that out in my Star Wars reviews playlist, right down in the description below. And this isn't really another review as such, but I'm going to list 4 things I like about it, 4 pros, and then I'm going to list 4 cons, and then I'm going to leave you guys in the comment section below to leave your pros and your cons. Try and be positive, try and be balanced. That's what this video's about, this pros and cons segment. It's all about engaging with the audience, so let's get into it. The pros and cons of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So we're going to start with the cons. So the first con I have, obviously, it's probably the biggest con of this movie. That is the clunky dialogue in this film. You know, you have the sand line. Then you've got the awkward, like, semi-creepy lines of dialogue from Anakin to Padme and their whole romantic chemistry they were supposed to have in this movie. It's really quite awkward. Then, you know, you've got some other lines of dialogue here or there that aren't great. And I think that's what lets this movie down the most is the dialogue. If the dialogue was a bit better and the chemistry between some of the actors, which, by the way, is my second con, hint, hint, was better, I think you'd end up with a better movie overall. Okay, second con, as I've just alluded to, is the chemistry between the actors. This movie, more than The Phantom Menace, feels more... The actors' performances feels a lot more robotic in a sense, because in The Phantom Menace, and I think a lot of this is due to the fact that in Attack of the Clones, George Lucas was leaning more and more towards green screen, blue screen, pioneering that CGI digital technology. And he was way more concerned with that than he was working on, you know, the dialogue and the chemistry between the actors. And when you've got actors standing in nothing but a blue or a green environment, I think the acting suffers as a result. And so on top of the, you know, not so great dialogue that George Lucas wrote, you have these actors giving these sort of wooden-ish performances, and there's no real chemistry between any of them. You know, Ewan McGregor, Sam Jackson, Hayden Christensen, you know, Natalie Portman, I understand they all did their best that they could, and props to them for doing so. But especially with that love story, you really don't get any chemistry between, any real legit chemistry. At least I didn't, between Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen. And when you have a movie like Attack of the Clones, where their love story is like the central theme of the movie, the chemistry is sort of priority number 1. Okay, con number 3 is the connectivity between this movie and the rest of the Star Wars universe. Honestly, I think introducing a young Boba Fett, I think having, you know, him being the son of Jango Fett and getting the armor and making him a clone, and I think the whole thing about, and this is really also more of a Phantom Menace issue, but I think the whole idea of 3PO being connected to Anakin in a sense and knowing who Anakin is in the first place, I think presents a larger problem that the Star Wars universe has sort of had to retrospectively work its way around. And so it's suffering from a lot of those like carryover issues from the Phantom Menace and trying to work its way through that, I guess, because George Lucas, and he said, I was recently watching the making of the Phantom Menace documentary, and he sort of says he writes himself into so much of a complex, convoluted story that it's really hard to get out of, and especially in the editing process, he's trying to edit the movie, but there's such a complicated web of story going on and all these intricate moving pieces that you end up in this situation where you can't really take anything out and you can't really change much because of how woven in this story is. And I think with all the connective tissue to Anakin in Attack of the Clones with 3PO, you have introducing young Boba Fett, I think a lot of these things didn't need to be focused on. And I think that it just created a problem for the larger Star Wars universe as a whole. And it's still, the Star Wars universe today is still dealing with the repercussions of some of the decisions that George Lucas, and I worship at the altar of George Lucas, made in this movie. Okay, the fourth and final con I have for Attack of the Clones, I think is Count Dooku. Count Dooku is not a character that I like, and I don't think he was a very interesting villain in this film. Because when you come off what Darth Maul was in The Phantom Menace, Darth Maul, you only had to look at him and you knew he was an awesome bad guy. He didn't say much, you didn't know anything about him, but he was cool. Count Dooku is just this old dude. And, you know, while I love Christopher Lee, all due respect to the great Christopher Lee, Count Dooku just wasn't a good bad guy. Like, it wasn't exciting. You weren't scared of him. Darth Maul, you were scared of. Darth Maul, you saw pose a legit threat to our Jedi heroes. And I feel like it should have carried over. I feel like you should have kept Darth Maul alive. I know he's still alive in the Clone Wars and Solo when they brought him back. But had they kept up, had Obi-Wan not cut Darth Maul in half in Phantom Menace, and George Lucas chose to have Darth Maul continue into Attack of the Clones as the primary apprentice to Palpatine, I feel like that might have been a bit of a better choice, or at the very least, a better villain than Dooku. And I get what he sets up and everything, but just, you have all these scenes of him just sitting down and talking at his evil council and all this stuff, and it just wasn't interesting. It just wasn't. And I think, that's where you come back around to the clunky dialogue and the clunky storytelling, the over complexity of this movie and of the prequels in general. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Count Dooku. I'm just not. I'm sorry. All right, let's get into the pros. And let's change the color of the damn light. Pro number 1. And this isn't really a movie-specific thing, something that happens in the movie. Attack of the Clones is quite the special movie to me. It has quite the special place in my heart. Because Attack of the Clones is the first Star Wars movie that I ever saw. This was my introduction to Star Wars. And even though I've just shit on it for 4 talking points, I saw Attack of the Clones at my friend's birthday party. His mum worked at the cinema. We went and saw it for his birthday. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know anything about Star Wars up until that point. And I watched it, and then I came home, and my parents showed me the original trilogy, and then I also saw Phantom Menace as well. But Attack of the Clones was my introduction to Star Wars, so it'll always have that special place in my heart. And I want to thank Attack of the Clones for existing. And I want to thank George Lucas, because without Attack of the Clones, I would not have my deep love, obsession with Star Wars that I have today. Okay, the next pro that I have for Star Wars Attack of the Clones is that it introduced us to maybe top 5 greatest sound effects in cinematic history, and that is Jango Fett's seismic charge from the Slave One. And as soon as I say that, you can all hear it in your heads. It is one of the greatest sound effects ever created. I don't know how they created that sound. I have no idea, but it is one of the greatest sound effects in cinematic history, and I'm glad that they brought it back in The Mandalorian and in the Book of Boba Fett. Fantastic. Oh, the light went out. We'll carry on. It's okay. We're still here. Don't be scared. As I was saying, that whole asteroid chase between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, it's an awesome sequence, and the seismic charge just is the icing on the cake to a great sequence in this movie. Okay, the third pro I have for Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones is Padme's midriff. No, I'm kidding. The third pro I have for Attack of the Clones is the Yoda versus Count Dooku fight. Even though I just said I'm not a big fan of Count Dooku, and I'm not. But controversial hot take here, I'm a big fan of lightsaber fighting Yoda. Give me that all day, every day. Yoda flipping around, screaming and yelling, and just whooping Dooku's ass. I love that fight. That fight is great. Yoda is a badass, and give me more lightsaber fighting Yoda. That's all I can say. All right, my last thing about Attack of the Clones, my last pro, probably the best sequence in the entire movie, that is the fight on Geonosis. I love that entire action scene. Every second they're in that arena, all the Jedi versus all the droids, Mace Windu chopping off Jango Fett's head, all the moments with the creatures that they bring into the arena and the clones showing up, Yoda showing up with the clones, all that stuff. That arena fight is awesome, and it's stuff that I wish we got a lot more of in the prequels, a lot of that real war feeling stuff, because that's really our first taste at a bunch of Jedi versus a bunch of enemies, whether it's droids or whatever it is. That really puts the war into Star Wars in this movie, and I really love all that stuff. So alright guys, there we are. There is the pros and cons for Attack of the Clones. Again, this isn't a full review, so of course I'm obviously missing out points that I would otherwise bring up if I was doing a full review, but I have already reviewed Star Wars Attack of the Clones with my friend Ali, so I will leave a link to my Star Wars playlist in the description below. Make sure you check that out. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Leave your pros and cons for Star Wars Attack of the Clones in the comment section below. Once again, thank you very much for watching. My name is Tom, and I'll see you guys next time.